Hi everybody, welcome back to Connerty Meadows Farm. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ricky. Today we're just going to go through a quick garden tour, and I'm going to apologize for being so absent lately. It's the middle of haying season, and if you don't know what that is, just wait, I'll be releasing a video about haying season shortly to show what I mean by what is haying season. Let's take you through. You can see back here all my blueberries and stuff, but I'll flip you around and we'll let you get a little bit of a closer look. Earlier in the season, I hit up Canadian Tire during the end of the year clearance kind of thing, and I was able to pick up a number of blueberry bushes. We've brought 4 of these with us from our old place, and I was able to buy actually 7 new ones. Look at all this beautiful new growth. This one's going to be able to give us blueberries next year. This is a high bush one, came with us from our old place. Oh, look. Oh, thank you very much. We've been eating off of it already quite a bit. So these are like the last stragglers. Another one from the clearance, and I paid like $1 or $2 for these ones. This one came with us. Another one from the clearance. This one came with us. This one was from the clearance. This one came with us. And this little guy was from the clearance rack, and he did have some green leaves on him, and I was really hoping he'd come back, but I'm not seeing anything, so we're just going to wait and see. His root system might still be okay in under there. He was in pretty bad shape when I brought him home, so we'll see if his root system pulls through, and if it does, we'll see what he does next spring. And if nothing happens, that's all right. I can just dig them up and put something else there, or just leave it. Here in the front, I have some hydrangeas that I just planted this season. Over here, I call this my sacrificial strawberry bed. I actually ended up moving a bunch of strawberries over to these 3 beds because the ones I had here, something had eaten them in this past winter. And so this, like if you look, let me move back here. This bed here goes from up here all the way down, and there's 3 rows, and this was my asparagus patch. But something burrowed under the ground, and you can see from about here over, there's just a few sprigs of asparagus, not much. Whatever it was, a mole or a vole or a something actually ate all of the crowns and killed off all the strawberries. So I dug up some of the strawberries, I transplanted them here, and I'm just gonna have to probably get some more crowns down in there in the spring. There's a couple reasons why I put the strawberries in with the asparagus. So the first reason is it gives a really good ground cover for the asparagus. The second reason is my main strawberry patch is over by the main garden, and so this is like my sacrificial patch. It's over in the front lawn, and I don't care if the chipmunks and squirrels eat this. I mean, I do, but it's more like to give them something to eat, so they leave the main garden alone. And the other reason why I plant the strawberries in with the asparagus is that asparagus is basically 3 years before you can harvest it. And strawberries' life cycle is about 3 years. So at the end of the 3 years, the strawberries are going to be dying off, and it'll be the right time for me to start harvesting the asparagus. We've got some flowers coming on of some of the strawberries some of them are everbearing and some of them are June bearing. We've got a little bit of both mixed in this bed. And then over here, we have a plum tree, another one of my $1, $2 end of the season rescue blueberries, another plum tree, another rescue blueberry, and then an apple tree that we put in this spring. It's called a fall red apple tree, and this one is from Hardy Fruit Tree Nurseries out of Quebec. We've had really, really great success with the trees from them. They've been really great to deal with. For those of you that have watched tours before, you'll know this is my beauty of a rose bush that we brought with us from our old place. It's an antique rose. I don't have any in bloom right now, but I'll pop a picture up here to show you how beautiful they are when they're in bloom. This one's pretty happy. It's got a lot of new shoots coming up from the ground, and I'm absolutely thrilled. So I don't actually call this a bush so much as a tree. At the old place, some of these got to be about 10 to 12 feet tall. they're really quite stunning. And over here, so there was some really ugly bushes here in the front that was totally blocking the view of the windows. We ripped them out when we first moved in. And these peonies I brought with us from our old farm. They bloomed this year, but they said it would be like 3 years. So I'm hoping maybe next year or the year after we'll get some more blooms from them. Got some borage in here and some zinnias. I planted some lavender up in here, and I obviously have to weed. And some more zinnias over here. This is a white rose bush, Sir Thomas Lipton. I bought it at end of season clearance last fall, so it's quite happy there. When we came from our old place, we actually had 3 of these little trugs at the back door of our old place, and they had all of our herbs and stuff in them. When we came here, obviously with the deck, I'll just back up here. 3 of them kind of looked funny, so we bought a 4th one, and now we have them spaced out. So this one has some fennel and some oregano. That one has zinnias, strawberries, and some cilantro that reseeded itself from last year. The next one over there is all thyme. There is 2 kinds of thyme. In case you're wondering, this is electric netting. And these are our meat chickens. And yes, I am the crazy neighbor that puts my chickens on my front lawn. We have 2 kinds of thyme in here, wild thyme variety, and then this little one, that's a little bit of a variegated thyme. And then we have chamomile, and I pick and dry all of this. I use it for teas, but I also use it in soaps and whatnot. So let's just pan you around. All right, and then we'll head over that way. I mentioned here that we have some hydrangeas. The owners from before us had them in a location they weren't as happy in, so I moved them up here. So far they seem to be doing okay. Eventually I'd kind of like to have like a little bit of a wall here that just kind of makes it pretty from the road, but gives us a little more privacy. Here we have some yarrow. This is actually a pink yarrow. I've dried a lot of it in the house, but I wanted this one to go to seed, so I'm going to be saving these seeds. And then some other flowers in here, some bee balm, daisies. They've kind of all died off. I'll pan you up around here, and I'm going to apologize that the grass is not cut and it doesn't look the greatest. Again, we're in haying season, and I actually had a bit of a gallbladder attack and ended up in the hospital, so things are really far behind what they would normally be. For those of you that don't know, we have put everything that you see in this property we have done. There was nothing on this property except for the house and the very old barn. If you see it and it's a young tree or a young bush, it's been planted by us. If it's a flower bed, it's been planted by us. The only ones we didn't plant are like obviously those really big trees up there, but any of the work that you see here, we have done. It was like more the people that lived here before, more just a kind of basic maintenance. We are trying to be a little more self-sufficient and homestead here. So a lot of changes obviously compared to someone that's just enjoying the country life, which is also perfectly acceptable. Just to give you an idea of what we've put into it, we moved here to this farm in December 2019. So just to give you a bit of a timeline of how much work we've put in since we moved in. All right, so let's have a look at these things here behind me, and let's talk about a little bit what we've got here. This is a front row hedge that we're hoping will eventually kind of fill in a lot more. I've got some lavender here on the end, and then I've got like the traditional light purple lilac. Then the whole rest of it is a Rosa rosacea, and they hedge out and they fill in quite a bit. The reason I picked this particular rose for the hedge was because I want to utilize this, and this is rose hips, so that I can dry and make rose hip tea, do other things with my soaps and lotions and whatnot. So this is all Rosa rosacea, and then in the middle, this plant right here is a dark purple lilac, and then it's a mirror image on the other side, all the Rosa rosacea, then a light purple lilac, and then a lavender. And then here in the front, I'm just going to pan you slowly so you don't get seasick. I have a white snowball bush. They're like one of my favorites. They come on in the spring with these big round fluffy kind of snowball looking plants. at the same time as the lilacs do, and every place we've ever lived has had them, and my grandmother had them, so I had to have them here. And this is called a herb spiral garden. Top part of the spiral, which is the tallest portion, let me back up and I'll show you. So this is the tallest portion, and then it spirals all the way down. You put things that like the heat and dry. So here we have rosemary, and then we have some thyme, which I've harvested quite a bit of, so there's not a lot left. We have some oregano, and this is parsley. There's a couple different kinds of parsley in here. Then we have a couple different kinds of basil that I need to harvest again. It's 2 kinds of basil. We've got a whole whack of sage, and again, a couple different kinds. And then down here, my cilantro has died off, and I'm going to be collecting all of these seeds. And then I also have in hiding down here, this is summer savory. This huge grass here is lemongrass, and I use that in a lot of teas and stuff, so that'll be chopped back, and it'll be dug up and brought inside. It doesn't overwinter here. And then here is some stevia. Now, a lot of people, when they make these herb spirals, down on the bottom here, they'll put like a water basin, and they'll put water loving plants down here. My plan is to put a little bit of a windmill there, because I'm Dutch and I need to have a windmill. For anyone interested in seeing the construction of this herb spiral, I can put a link for it down below. We have a pear tree and another pear tree, a rose bush. This bed here is mint, lemon balm, and catnip. And I have this here in this bed. We harvest it. I use it for teas and in my soaps and stuff. I don't care if it goes crazy in the lawn up here. That's why I've just kind of let it do its own thing. Look at this rose bush. Isn't she beautiful? So I do collect all these petals as well, and I dry them and I use them in my soaps and whatnot. This tree bush has a little bit of a story on the rose bush. My husband was in the military. We were stationed in Cold Lake, Alberta. We were there for 5 years, and while we were there, we spent some money beautying up the house, and one of the things that we bought was this new and improved rose for cold hardy area, and it was this rose. And I just loved the color of it. We had it there. We had it for 5 years. Then when we were stationed to New Brunswick, I dug it up, I put it in a pot, and I brought it with us. We put it in the ground in New Brunswick. We were there for 2 years. And then I knew we would be moving in the early spring of the second year. So I put it in a pot for that before like the winter came. And I stored it in a manner that I thought would be okay. And then we brought it with us to our old farm in Kingston, just outside of Kingston area. And I planted it there, but it didn't take it. Obviously, it got some winter freezing. Anyway, we were in Kingston for 7 years, and I'd been looking for the rose bush again. I really, really liked it. I wanted to get another one, but I couldn't remember the name of it. Obviously, by then, the tag is long since gone. I knew it was sunrise, sunset, something. I put on my personal Facebook page out to my friends, because I still have lots of friends in Alberta and whatnot, and I put a picture of it and I said, hey, does anybody happen to know what this is? It was developed in the colder regions of the prairies. So I was like, you know, someone out there has got to know what it is. One of my friends actually was able to find out what it was. As soon as she sent me the link and I saw the name, I was like, oh, that's it. Modern Sunrise. And I was like, that's it. Well, then I tried to find it. I couldn't find it anywhere. There was nowhere that would ship it. There was a lot of places in the States that had it. I couldn't get it. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, it's just a rose bush. Then my cousin is shopping in Lowe's, and he sends me a picture, and he's like, I know you were looking for a rose. Is this it? And yes, it was. So my cousin was able to grab it for me, and this is it. When my cousin brought it to me, it was actually only about that tall. And there's a lot, as you can see, a lot of new growth here. And look how tall it is. So it's very, very beautiful. All right, moving on Down here, there's another snowball bush there, so it's kind of a mirror image. We have the snowball bush, pear tree, rose bush, pear tree, snowball bush. I tried to kind of mirror image. Obviously, the herb garden and the mint garden are not mirror image of this garden. When we first moved here down in the bush, we found this old cement mixer. In fact, the stand for it is still right there. We tore it all apart and we put it in here, and we kind of made it so that it was all spilling out. My neighbor donated some flowers. My mother-in-law donated some flowers. My mother-in-law gave me the dahlia, and I had some extra flowers, and we threw it all in. And this is that bed. There's a YouTube video I can link below showing you how we made all of this as well. It's a pretty short video. So let's go on up to the front garden beds there, and I'll talk about a little bit what's up there. I will admit I'm not the biggest flower person. My neighbor came over early this spring and helped me do these beds. There wasn't really a lot of flowers or anything in here, so now we are looking at a whole lot of flowers. My mother-in-law gave me some as well, so we have some daisies, some cedium. No idea what this is called. Some phlox. There was some bee balm in here. A few other things. This one I had my husband buy. Look at the colors on this echinacea. Isn't it stunning? Some bee balm back there. Well, I gifted and ripped out this. Actually, this whole bed was just that, the whole thing. So I ripped all those out this spring. Some cedium here. At our old farm, we had rows of Sharons that I absolutely loved. And so my husband actually went and bought me some. And so this is one of the rows of Sharons that he got for me. We have a lonely calendula. These big guys, I had actually asked at the beginning of the season what they were because I had no idea. They didn't flower last year. Well, they flowered this year, but they plunked over too. They were up high and I didn't tie them back. So now I know next year I'll put a stake in the ground and I'll tie these guys back, but just left them for now. This is lamb's ears. I brought this with us from our old farm. Funny story, at our old farm, the lamb's ears were beside the garden and my husband would like mow around the garden all the time. And so they always got mowed down over and over and over again. And I had no idea, like zero clue, that they actually grew flower stalks. These little flower stalks here, I had no idea. I actually just thought that they stayed like this and were like really just soft and cute and whatever. But it was kind of nice to see that the flower stalks came up and they got these little purpley flowers on them. So that was a nice surprise. Some cosmos back there that are dying off, Johnny jumpers. And this is the other Rose of Sharon that my hubby bought for me to make me feel better that I had to leave my other beautiful 7-year established ones away. Oh, well, hello, little guy. Well, hello. It's working hard. These echinacea were here when we moved in. I think there was only about 3 flowers. They had planted them just for the sale of the home, so we obviously are letting them expand, and they're quite beautiful. The bees really like them. And we have some phlox over here. Again, this is from my neighbor. And so these are our meat chickens. We rotate them around on the lawn. This gets moved around and then the fence gets moved around. In the early spring, we actually put the goats here on this lawn. And normally, if I pan you over here, normally we have the goats like kind of running through here or down in strips to the apple orchard. But now that we've got all the hay off of the field behind the barn, we've actually turned the goats loose with the horse. The goats and the sheep now are all in the main field with the horse there. And this is the garden area here. So we're going to pop over here first. We're going to talk about what's here and then we'll hit up the garden area. Here in front of the garden shed, I have jewelweed. Now, I brought this jewelweed with us from our old place. It's not doing super well here because it's been a really dry year. It's kind of mixed in with some of these little guys and some other little flowers and some weeds and thistles, obviously. So jewelweed is poison ivy's natural antidote. It also works really well to take the sting out of stinging nettle. It also works with helping combat the pain and the blistering of wild parsnip. So it is an excellent plant to have. So if you have a quick look at it here, this is the stalk of it. And if you were to like pop this stalk open, on the inside is a gel, and it's that gel that you want to apply to your burns or your cuts or your poison ivy or your stinging nettle or any of that. Kind of like you would an aloe vera plant, you'd kind of slice it open and go from there. They're also referred to as touch-me-nots. So these are the pretty little flowers that you get from them. And they're referred to as touch-me-nots because when they put out their seed pods, you can see the seed right there. When the seed pods are ready and you touch it, it actually will explode like fireworks. This guy is too green yet and not, oh, there, actually. So there we go. You got to see it kind of go a bit. Seeds are pretty tiny. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm just going to drop this down here. Now, there are a number of you within the Kentville Gardener group that might be watching this. I promised you seeds, so obviously some of these seeds are starting to go. I'm going to get out here and I'm going to collect some of these and I can get them to you. I just have to put a bag over them carefully, and then I touch them and I let them pop open in the bag. And then you'll just have to sprinkle them on your soil surface where you want them to be, and they'll come up next year. And then over here is the jungle of the garden that I haven't really had the greatest time getting to do the weeding of. I'm going to apologize for that. But I'm sure just like everyone else, we're kind of at the end of the season now, so things are getting a little bit harder. So here is our strawberries. This row here, these two rows, that one and that one, are the June-bearing strawberries. And then these two rows here, this one and that one, are the ever-bearing strawberries. And actually some of these are starting to come back in. You can see here, we're starting to get strawberries again. The only thing with right now is all the wasps are being kicked out of their nest. The queen's not putting her pheromones out anymore to tell them to work, and they don't know what to do. And so they're just looking for a sugary high. And they end up coming in here. So you got to be really careful when you're harvesting that you also don't grab a handful of wasp. Very good. And this, my friends, is a tomato wall. In these walls of tomatoes, I have some bigger ones and cherry ones as well. I'll bring you up close. We are right at the time of year where I need to come along with some nippers and cut the top of all of these tomatoes back. And you're probably wondering why we need to do that. All of my tomatoes are indeterminate varieties, which means that they just keep growing up and up and up and up and up. And what happens is our frost dates here in Ontario are all much earlier than our southern neighbors. And in order for you to tell the plant to put the energy into ripening the fruit that it's already got, instead of putting energy into growing taller and more fruit, we have to cut the top off. When we cut the top off, it will signal it to put its energy into getting this fruit down here ripened and forming. We need to do that because our frost dates come, and I don't like to go into the end of August, beginning of September, where we can get frost, and have all of this unripe fruit that didn't get triggered. So this week my job will be to come and top them. I should have actually done this about a week or two ago. Unfortunately, with the haying that was a lot later this year due to the rain and my gallbladder attack, the garden just kind of got a little bit neglected. That being said, there's lots of big ripe tomatoes on here, and I will be harvesting them right after I am done this too. We got some Paul Robeson down there. These little guys, blonde, I can't even pronounce the name. I'll put the name on the screen on the bottom for you. They are such a prolific tomato. It's unbelievable. Like the amount of flowers this thing puts off. Oh, hey little guy. It's just crazy. So they are one of my favorite producing cherry tomatoes. They're not really big, but they're super delicious. I'll write it out properly for you. But just to give you an idea, this is why I can't say it. We got some Paul Robesons here. These are called black cherry tomatoes, but they're much bigger than the little yellow cherry tomatoes. These ones I think are some of my favorite. These are the Berry Blues, and they are from Baker Creek. Let me see if I can show you why I love these ones so much. Ah, look at that. Isn't it so pretty? See the little star? That's why I like them. They're so pretty and they taste delicious. A few other kinds of yellows here. I'm going to give you a view of the garden from here. So then we have another tomato trellis wall. And you can see there'd be a jungle in there. Let me flip you around. Just to try to give you an idea of the height of some of these guys. Like, it is definitely pretty tall in here. So over here we have, this is celery. I had never actually grown celery before, so this was a trial year. I will definitely be growing celery again. It's amazing, it's delicious. Then we had some lettuce, and down there we have some broccoli. And then we have some corn. We've actually already done a couple corn harvests. So on the end here, I have bush beans, and then I have corn. Then I have a small climbing bean. Funny story about this is my plan was bush beans on each end of the corn rows, and then another set of bush beans on the front of the corn rows. And I planted this one, and the package said that it was bush beans. But they sent up tethers and were climbing like crazy within a very short order. So I quickly threw up this trellis. This is just using some wood from the woods. So it's just some cedar. And then I quickly put in some binder twine, and you can't even see it. This is like totally wrapped. Oh, here, this one here. You can see. I threw some binder twine up to the top. There's one more main trellis there and then one at the end. And I don't know, they climb pretty good, I think. Definitely mislabeled, that's for sure. Because that's a bush bean, and then we had the corn. And then this was supposed to be a bush bean, and then the corn. And the same thing on the other side. But there's no way, that's definitely not a bush bean. And then down in here, we have some patty pan squash. And more than ready to be harvested. So what I like about the patty pan is squash just kind of stays in a big circle, and then I had my pumpkins behind it, and over here on this dead part that does look dead, which is it's supposed to at this time of year, is my potatoes, and we have another bean trellis. We'll come back to that in a second. In the middle was a pumpkin, and I'm pretty sure I got a squash vine borer in through it, and as well as my patty pan on the end. Just going to take you through, but to be honest with you, I could not keep on top of fighting that squash vine borer, and so nature is as it does, and this will all be tilled. That said, there is a pumpkin. I think you can see the orange kind of right in there, and there's actually right in the middle of the corn, there's another pumpkin there. And then there's one right down there at that patty pan squash. So I'm hoping that I can keep the vines going long enough to ripen those pumpkins off. Oh, and look, there's one right here. Right there. Oh, baby. But this plant looks okay. I had planted 2 pumpkins, and one of them got taken out, and the other one seems to be doing okay. So I'm just going to leave it. And this on the vertical trellis is butternut squash. This is the first year I've actually vertically trellised squash. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm 100% doing it again. What a difference in keeping it up off the ground and able to be checking for pests, just being able to see and check in on it, water it appropriately, and just like I am really, really pleased. This is definitely I'm going to be doing again. These are the other 2 patty pan squash. You can see this one's starting to die off. This one is pretty much dead, and I know that that's squash vine borer, but again, it happens. I got to get this ripped out. Today's job, get those last of the patty pans harvested and just pull it right out. Feed it to the goats. And down here, corn, and then I have some purple bush beans, and then some other bush beans here along with the corn. And my broccolini, which has to be harvested for dinner tonight. We're gonna do stir fry, so it's perfect. It's ready to go. This is apple mint. It's quite delicious. I saved it at the end of the season sale. All right, moving on to this big beast. This wall is my bean trellis wall. Within the Kentville Gardeners group and even friends and family, I gave many bean seeds away last year, and these are the same seeds that I gave away to friends and family. One of my favorites is these little purple guys here. This is a purple peacock. I also have on here Kentucky Wonder and Blue Lake pole beans, and all three of those are like kind of like my staple beans. I love, they just do really, really well. They produce and produce and produce, and you get this magnificent bean structure. If you're interested in knowing how we built this, I'll link the YouTube video on that down below. But it is quite impressive. And over here, this is a pergola. I put this in this spring. We have a YouTube video on that. I can link it below for you. I wanted to add something a little different to the garden. The kids were really missing their swing set from the old farm. So it is big enough to hold the swings. I have to get in there and put in another few lines of wire to hold the raspberries back, and then we'll have it clear. They also have a hammock in there and a pod in there. We have a solar light chandelier that we're going to be adding in the middle as well. Just time. But that is the pergola. So its job is to keep the raspberries back. But also at the bottom of each of the posts is a grape vine, except for the front two here. The front two posts, we have kiwi growing on the bottom. It's a cold hardy kiwi, and the hope is eventually that the kiwi and the grapes will go up and over the top and fill it all in. So it'll be like kind of a little sanctuary down inside there. The front of these beds, I have some haskaps. This one is Borealis, which then means that that one is Aurora. And in the front here, for those of you that don't know, these Chinese lantern looking thingies are ground cherries, and they are delicious. Ground cherries are not safe to eat until they fall off on their own. And they'll fall off these husky papery coverings. And then when you pop them up inside, you'll have a nice little cherry tomato kind of looking thing. It has the texture of a tomato, but it's so much sweeter. We love eating them just straight off the vine, or straight off the ground, I should say. That's the reason ground cherries. But one of my other favorite things to do with them when I have an excess of them is in my salsa recipe, whatever it calls for in tomatoes, I will put half of the amount of tomatoes and the other half in ground cherries. And the flavor is absolutely amazing. It will change your whole salsa making and eating experience. I promise. It's delicious. I do know some people that just exclusively make salsa with ground cherries. It tastes like just super, super sweet. I still want salsa to take a little bit like that tomato-y kind of flavor. So I found that half and half is just really, really good. So this little guy here, see, he's actually fallen off. He was just sitting on the branch. But you gotta wait till they do that. If they're green inside, when you open them, if that's green, you don't want to eat it. You want it when it's orangey. The bean trellis, actually at the end of the bean trellis over there, and I think you can kind of see it, is a sunflower. So on each side of that bean trellis, I have a sunflower just facing the road. It makes it look pretty. So this is all raspberries. I have two different varieties of raspberries in here, but they've kind of all interplanted. Another round of raspberries here, a round of raspberries here. Last year I had sunflowers in my raised beds, and the birds kind of replanted them everywhere. So we ended up every time I'd find one, I'd replant it. But the one that grew here is actually my favorite sunflower, the color of it, in the middle of the raspberry patch. So I just let it go. It's a busy place. Look at them all. The color is just stunning. It's that like reddish, yellowy kind of, yeah, so pretty. On the ground between the raspberry beds and actually my whole garden, you'll notice there's this black kind of fabric barrier, and it looks plasticky, and it is kind of plasticky, but it is water porous, so the water goes through it, but the weeds can't come up through the middle of it. Originally, between these raspberry beds, we had wood chips down, and it wasn't keeping the weeds at bay. So this has been our solution because we used it in the garden with great success. So we kind of just transferred it up over to here. Oh, you can see there's my sunflowers at the end of my bean trellis. Oh, and you can see here, look, here's one of the grapes. This little guy's already winding up around the wire there. So I do have to finish tying the raspberries back. In the middle of the raspberry rows here and here, I have pepper plants. This year was my pepper plant trial. Now, unfortunately, it's been so stinking hot. Kind of a little wilty today. I'm gonna water them up. Even with the rain we had in the last couple days, it just hasn't been enough. But I've never actually successfully been able to grow great peppers. And this year, I've already harvested so many peppers out of these pots. It makes me very happy. Oh, look, Sylvester. Hey, buddy. Our barn cat, who has moved into the neighbor's house next door, and he's become a cushy house cat, comes back just to lay on the black fabric and just sprawl out. Like, look at the size of these guys. I've never grown peppers this big, so I'm quite pleased with growing in the pots. I do highly recommend it. The only thing is that I definitely need to water more, and that is glaringly obvious at this moment with the heat we've been having. Over here are the hot peppers, as I said. One of our lovely members of the Kempville Gardeners group did a seed swap with me, and he had a whole pile of hot peppers. I don't eat hot peppers, but Thomas eats hot peppers. So the majority of the peppers here are from him. So thank you, Joel, if you're watching. We've already made hot pepper pickles for my husband, and he has been super, super happy with them. Some of these peppers here came from my daughter's piano teacher, but the rest of them came from Joel. There's some Sugar Rush peaches. These little guys are really awesome. They're not ripe right now, but they're called cherry bombs. They're like round red ones. Pretty cool. Like some habaneros here. Very, very neat. So I'll pan you over here, and now we are into the raised beds. As I stated, we moved in here December 2019, and so we really had no idea what we were getting into. I knew we needed a garden. This was kind of, this actually whole area here that you see and around behind me was just a hayfield. And then we discovered that it was pretty wet, so we made the decision to put in the raised beds, knowing that it was kind of a bit of a flood zone. And we thought, if nothing else, we can have food in these 4 raised beds. We harvested the trees from the forest, we lined them, and then we brought soil in. We did put in some of our poop, and we put in the peelings from the wood, so we peeled them all off. We put the peelings from the wood in the bottom, so we could build up without using quite as much soil. We waited a little bit, and then we were able to see that the main part that we wanted the garden to be in was going to dry out enough to have a garden, but we didn't know what it would be like in the flooding. So we planted the main garden thinking it was a little bit sacrificial. If it lived, it lived. If it flooded, that's okay, because we would still have all the raised beds. You'll notice even my raspberries have too high of raised beds, so the same reason. And the strawberries at the front are actually hilled, which turned out really, really well, because this spring, when this part of the garden was all underwater, there was standing water between the strawberry beds, but they were uphilled high enough that they did not drown, basically. So it's just a matter of we plant the raised beds first, and then we wait for it to dry out, and then we plant the main garden. So we get a little bit of both, and my butt is covered in case it's a total flood out. This year, of course, with the drought, it's the complete opposite. But anyway, I have hog panels, which is very similar to cattle panels. They're just shorter. So I actually have 2 hog panels in place. I've used hog panel arches versus cattle panel arches because we actually came to this farm with all of our panels from the hogs. So I was able to utilize them here. And then on the trellising system that I have here, and actually in the front of the garden, is what you would buy from Home Hardware. It's like a rebar. It goes in the bottom of cement, and that's what I use for trellising up the tomatoes in this garden. So over here we have a big hodgepodge of things. The calendula kind of took over. It's kind of neat, actually. They reseeded themselves, like this one right here. So I plant yellow calendula and orange calendula, and some of the ones that came back this year, a bit of both. So it's like they cross-pollinated, so they have yellow in the middle and orange on the outside. Very cool. I use the calendula in a lot of my soap making stuff and salves and infusions, so that's why there's so much of it. We have some cucamelons here. I know for some of you, cucamelons, like there's a big rage about it, so you want to grow them. You plant them and you think that they're never going to do anything. And they are very, very slow starters. And I mean very, very slow. Like they'll stay this size for like what feels like ever. And then suddenly you'll come out and they'll have shot up. They are also referred to as sour gherkins or mouse melons. And the reason for that is, this is the size of them. So this is a good size to pick them. You don't want to really go too much bigger than that. They start to kind of get like a overripe cucumber, where they just the flavor isn't as good, and they're more seeds than cucamelon itself. So cucamelon tastes a little bit like a cucumber, but there's a little bit of a lime texture to it as well. Pretty crunchy. The inside for you. Very, very good though. Daughter comes out here and raids the patch quite readily. But yeah, I don't pick them much bigger than this. We so far have never gotten enough to do anything with pickling wise, but I know lots of people do. They do fridge pickles or whatever. Apparently they don't stand up very well to the whole pickling process, which is why most people just do fridge pickles with them, because then there's no processing involved, like the heat or whatnot. Personally, I just like to eat them all fine. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, you see this little guy here? The flower. Oh, this little guy here is ready to eat. There we go. There's a teeny tiny little flower for you. Very, very small little guys. All right, and then this hot mess over here. We've got lots of carrots planted in here, tomatoes. This one here is one of my favorites. This is a Kellogg's breakfast tomato. They are massive and they're orange. They're delicious. I had peas on the end here. I hadn't had time to pull them. I was getting ready to pull them, and then I noticed the poor little things are struggling to produce more. Very, very cute. This wild patch here is comfrey. I have been saving the seeds for that, and I will be able to gift anyone seeds that wants it. In medieval times, it was called knitbone. It's got a lot of really great healing properties. It is also a really great fertilizer. Yes, I have a water trough in my garden. Water trough has a story. I swear almost everything in this farm has a story. But anyway, water trough. We lived in Cold Lake, Alberta. Kind of covered that already. When we lived in Cold Lake, Alberta, we had our horses with us. We bought this water trough in Cold Lake, Alberta. We were stationed there for 5 years. And then we moved to New Brunswick. Water trough came with us. It was 2 years in New Brunswick. Then we moved from New Brunswick to our farm outside of Kingston, and water trough came with us, and it was there for 7 years. And then we moved here, 2019. Water trough came with us. Spring 2020, I was cleaning the water trough just like I do every year in the spring. I give it a good scrub, and I scrubbed right through the bottom. It had rusted right out, which was really, really sad. But I mean, come on, that's a lot of years for a water trough to last, so I couldn't really complain. It didn't really owe us anything. So instead of like wasting it, I put a whole bunch of the same wood peelings that we had put from the garden beds in the bottom. I filled up a whole bunch of it. Then I had some sand that I put on the bottom, and then we just topped it up with soil, and we've added it to the garden space. And it is growing me my dill in the garden. It had some Johnny jumpers, and it has this weed. And you're going, why are you letting the weed grow? Well, we have bees, so I let the weed grow for the bees. And we've got some carrots, and I'm letting them go to seed. Some of them I had left in the ground from last year, so if they go to seed, I let them. And I collect the seeds, then I don't have to buy so many. Some Black Beauty tomatoes there. Beautifully, look at the size of these things. So nice. Oh, I think this is one of my biggest ones this year. Look at this. Like, I don't even think I can show you for real how big this thing is. Pretty awesome. We have zinnias, and I have like a whole thing of lavender in here. Nasturtiums. My favorite little tomatoes again. In the front of this bed, I had a whole bunch of radish. And radish, now I've kind of let them go to seed. Many of you probably don't know that these radish pods here are edible. Not right now. At this point in the season, these are more seeds than radish edible. But what you do is you let these go to seed. And then if you look, see all that food? All of these seed pods, if you harvest them early enough, you can use for food. I actually tend to, more often than not, purposely let the radish go to bolt and then to seed, because I get more radish per plant by letting it do this than just eating like the little round radish, because each of these pods is edible. And then we put them in stir fries and in salads. They taste very much like a radish, just not as sharp. The other thing is having the radish in front of the cucumbers kind of messes up the cucumber beetle's scent of smell. And you'll actually end up getting a little bit of cucumbers. Now mine, again, it's just been so dry. I have not been able to water as much as I can. So I actually ended up buying cucumbers locally this year. So this is a radish seed pod, but when they're young, completely edible. And it's exactly like a radish, just not as strong. And it's funny that a lot of people don't know that, but roast them in the oven with some butter and garlic, put them in your stir fry. Absolutely delicious. Now this hot mess here is carrots gone to seed. Looks like Queen Anne's lace or whatnot, but again, I keep a lot of my seeds, so it's good. Oh my goodness, see, I left the peas in, and with the cold weather we've been having in the evening, they started producing again. How funny is that? Oh, I've got some borage here, some lovage. This is ginger mint. These peas need to be ripped out. This over here, oh, I got some basil in here. I also have some marigolds in here. These beauties here, these are called Black Beauties. These are my favorite. Now, how do you tell when they're ready? So Black Beauties, when they're not ready, see how that's green on the bottom? But a Black Beauty that is ready, this part here, do you see how it's starting to go like a purpley color? So it'll turn to like this part right here. It'll be more that color when it's all ripe. I don't think any of these, no. See, these are all still green, not ready yet. That's how you tell that they're ready. Lots of tomatoes here. Look at this show of zinnias. They're beautiful. They bring in the pollinators. and we do have bees, so it's important that I have food for the bees as well, not just the garden. This strawberries, I planted them in here last year because I ran out of space in the main garden, and it was just supposed to be a temporary solution. Unfortunately, they have taken over this whole bed. So this fall, all of these strawberries will be ripped out. I'll be putting them in pots and either selling them or moving them to the sacrificial strawberry bed because they're just absolutely destroying my raised bed garden. So same thing with the radish seeds pods over here. If you want radish pods, let me know. I'm going to have lots. So these are, like I said, these are carrot seeds. So they start out like flowers. This is actually one of my purple carrots, and it actually has like purple stems, so I know that that's going to be one of my dark purple carrots. Then they start to dry out. They curl up like this, and you can actually see, if you look closely, you can see the seed pods in there. Once these are all dried up, then I'll be able to have the seeds. Sometimes I purposely leave a few of each kind of carrot so that this happens. And then it's not only food for the pollinators, but I get seeds for next season. Oh my goodness, see, look, same thing. I left these poor little things in when they should have come out, and they're giving me peas. Oh, overachievers. But they're delicious. Here we have some more hot peppers in pots on the end. A volunteer tomato. I just left it. This is that little orange one that I love, so I left it. These are Paul Robesons. Look at the size of those monsters. Beautiful. Zinnias. Definitely have harvesting to do. Pulled up in the front here was lettuce, romaine. I had to pull it all up. It had bolted, and poor little cucumbers struggling along, trying to do their best. Some kale down here. And then this more of the same on this side. Actually, there is one plant I have in here that I don't have in any of my other garden beds. Down here, this little guy. It's called a piss-off plant. Cats don't like the smell of it, so I try to get it out early in the spring. But it also doesn't like the cold, so you got to be careful with it. And when you touch it, it kind of smells skunky. So the cats don't like the smell of it. So I put it in the garden bed where they tend to like to use the washroom the most, and then they stay away. Down here on this row, I have an apple tree enclosed in here. This is a chicken coop. If you look over there, you'll see beside that post, there's a mulberry tree, and then there's a sunflower, and then there's another mulberry tree there. And then over here, in these little raised beds here, I have haskaps. And these two and those two were my $1, $2 Canadian Tire end of the season savers. The other ones I had brought in. On the other side of the rabbit hutches are 2 more haskaps. You can see, so our chicken coops here. And then down here. This bed here was all my garlic, which is now out, and then I just have to put some more soil into the ground here. Some sunflowers and some kale. Oh look, little yellow cardinal. Do you see him right there? Or canary, or whatever you want to call them. Little yellow canary. They love the sunflowers, which is why I leave them for them. I have a hot plant here that we brought with us from our old farm. Borage, and then we had chamomile and lots of comfrey and super tall sunflowers. Now these sunflowers I didn't plant the seeds of. As I said last year, actually at the beginning, last year I planted in front of each of the arches. So we had the arch, and then on the front of each of the arches I had planted sunflowers, which was great. It was beautiful, but they ended up shading out all of the food on the arches. So my whole idea of growing food on the arches didn't happen because the food didn't grow. Actually, it didn't really grow this year either, but we'll get there. We'll get there. But anyway, I was finding the sunflowers all over the ground, all over the raised bed. So each time I found a little sunflower seedling, I'd pick it up and I'd bring it over, and I planted it here in front of the chicken coops. And it is a bee-loving, bird-loving place, which is exactly what I wanted it to be. The other nice thing is they kind of shade the chicken coops a little bit. Not that I'm trying to hide them from the road, but it definitely makes it much prettier from the road. So in amongst these sunflowers, I also have some blackberries. A couple of the blackberries are like the end of the clearance, the $1, $2 ones that I got from Canadian Tire. They're doing all right. There's also some borage in here and some cosmos that have not yet given me any flowers. Unfortunately, the sunflowers did kind of shade out the blackberries. You can see here, like, blackberries are struggling a little bit, so that's on me. I'll know next year maybe not to put so many, which really sucks because like this view is absolutely stunning. Unfortunately, some of the plants down there did suffer a little bit, so in the fall we'll cut those all back, and next year I probably won't be as exuberant in my sunflower plantings. Well, in rescuing the seedlings, I should say, since I didn't plant them. So this bed down here I made later on in the summer. I had a lot of tomato starts left that like weren't the prettiest or didn't sell or whatever, so I put them along the wall here. And then I also had peppers, and we have basil in here. About half the bed this way is sweet peppers, and that half are seeds from Joel. So they're hot peppers. As you can see, like it's so hot and dry. I can't get a hose back here. I actually have to hand bomb all the water back here. So they probably are a little more thirsty than they should be, but they're still hanging in there. The plan for all of these tomato plants is that the majority of these tomatoes will be donated to the food bank or anywhere else that someone needs them, because I do still have quite a few in the main garden. I see this little guy fell over even though I had him tied up. But yeah, we have lots of peppers in here again, the hot ones, and habanero, and sugar rush peach, and biscuino. And these ones though, this is the sweet ones. These ones are ones I started from seed. I've never been able to grow peppers like this. I'm very, very thrilled. So this here is the view that I think is my favorite view of the farm this year. I really love seeing the wall of sunflowers and then all the food in the gardens, and the chickens in the background. And these are all trees that we planted. The 5 here are cherry trees, more of a tart cherry tree. And then the 5 in the front are all Cortland apples. And this row here of apple trees, each of these trees is a different variety. Those trees in the front all came from Kraus Nursery. These trees in this row, as well as the plums, pear trees, lilacs, roses. A good majority of my trees actually came from Hardy Tree Fruit Nursery in Quebec. So that is where the majority of these guys came from. And they're all different varieties. A lot of the ones on this side are heirloom varieties, which I really wanted to have for the farm. Figure if I'm going to plant food and plant trees and have things that are kind of like a long term, I really want to have heritage ones. That said, I do like really cool looking stuff too. So you'll like the black beauties, the purple peacock beans. I like having a little pop of color in the garden too. So, so other than some back flower beds, which really aren't that exciting, and the bee yard, which I can't go to because I'm allergic to bees, I do have multiple bee videos on our YouTube channel you can check out if you want to see the bee yard and all of that kind of stuff. That kind of completes our garden tour for today. It was really sunny and hot, and like the sun's gone behind some clouds, and maybe, crossing our fingers, we'll get some more rain. Everything definitely needs it. Happy to answer any questions, be it gardening or farming related. I don't profess to know everything, but I've had a few years to accumulate quite a bit of knowledge. And of course, I've had my parents teach me, and you know, through my own experiences and talking with other gardeners. So I hope that you have enjoyed the garden tour today. Thanks for hanging out on the farm with us, and we'll see you next time. Have a great one. Hey, goatees. Oh, snack time. Snack time. Oh, those two don't belong to her, but they're looking for a snack too. Too funny. Hey, girls. You cleaning the field out? Yeah. They have a whole access to all the field right now. Anyway, they can go through the bush back there and into the hayfield now that we finally got the hay off. So they'll be here for a very long time. Goats and sheep alike.